Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today for another Pulse Equine webinar. Today we're going to be talking about animal detoxification, what to look for, and what you as the PEMF provider can do. My name is Paige Chamerlik. I'm the Equine Animal Product Specialist Team Lead here at Pulse Equine. Prior to working with Pulse Equine, I managed a couple custom care boarding facilities throughout Tennessee. I also have my animal science degree focusing in equine studies with Murray State. You can see all the different disciplines that I've participated and still participate in, and I have been with the company for about 2.5 years now and loving every single day. But let's go ahead and jump on into things here. Today we're going to be discussing what the source of a detox is, what does a detox look like in animals, and then what you can do to help manage detoxes when you do see them. So the first thing we're going to go over is the cells. Everything in PEMF always come back to the cells. And so the first thing to note is that every cell in the body produces an amount of waste. Now, cellular waste can be an overall mix of any damaged or unwanted proteins, any byproducts of cellular respiration, so things such as water, carbon dioxide, and lactic acid can all be found in muscle cells, and then the proteins that have been misfolded throughout the Krebs cycle and those that no longer are able to function are all considered cellular waste. And so every cell has different organelles that help them get rid of all this unwanted junk that gunks up the cell's regular function. The first one is the lysosome, and these are organelles that use acid and several different digestive enzymes to digest any unwanted other organelles in a process called autophagy. And when you break down that word, it literally means self-eating. Auto meaning self, phagy meaning eat or eating, and it acts as a stomach to process all these older and decayed organelles in the body. The protozomes are actually used to digest all the unwanted proteins. That's their sole job in this process. And so if any component of the cellular garbage disposal, so to speak, isn't working sufficiently, it can actually lead to cellular dysfunction. Think of all the gunk in the cell gumming up all the gears that makes things work. So what is a PEMF detox? A cellular detox is something that happens in the body naturally, but then when we apply PEMF to the mix, we're going to see something a little bit different. So we all know the basic relationship of PEMF and the cellular membrane, but just to recap, the magnetic field is traveling on the electrical currents that are already pre-existing in the body. Those cell membranes are electrically based and may respond to the magnetic fields that the PEMF is providing. And as the PEMF stimulates and exercises these cell membranes, it may change the ions on either side of the membrane to trigger that open and close mechanism of the cell. Now, cells can neither be halfway open or halfway closed. They are either all the way open or all the way closed. And so it's important that they're able to function throughout this process. When the cell is able to open, it's able to release those toxins into the body so they can be properly disposed of through the different eliminative organs, which we're going to cover as well. So these eliminative organs all process the unwanted debris, and in order for these organs to function at their best, we can do a couple prior steps as if to prep them so that they are able to function properly. And some of these steps may include a balanced diet, proper exercise, and then also limiting the amount of toxins that they run into on the daily basis. So where do toxins come from for animals? We're very familiar on the human side about what kind of toxins we see in our daily lives. Everything from things we consume in our diet to the medication, cleaning products, technology junk, and also the smog from general pollution, amongst many, many other things, are all things we're very cognizant of. Now, with animals, we try to keep them as natural as we can, but they still run into a certain level of toxicity through different things that are applied to them and in their environment. So we're going to be looking at things such as your fly control, any processed feeds or supplements, medications, and then also fertilizers and pesticides that are in their pasture and or their hay. Now, this isn't saying to go and stop doing all of these things, because we are applying things such as supplement and fly control for quality of life. It's just looking at, are we using high quality? Are we using more natural products? Are we overstimulating the body with all these things we're adding in there? Is it a properly balanced diet? Do they need all the supplements that they're on? These are all things that we can review as animal owners. Now it's time to detox. So, how do horses themselves handle detox? We mentioned the eliminative organs a few slides back, and we're going to be going through each of these systems. Now, a lot of them are identical from species to species, and so we're not going to cover them for every single different animal type, and we're going to go over their general function. But I am going to point out a few small differences with them for each different animal. The first one we're going to start with is the digestive system and the liver. The liver sits on the right side of the horse's body, and we don't really know too much about the liver in the day-to-day function of horses. Usually we're more familiar with it because we know that horses don't have gallbladders, and so the liver is their primary bile forming and storage organ, and that's usually where we stop talking about the liver. But the liver is a huge part of every animal's immune system, cellular repair, and a ton of different other things. So they're mainly responsible for processing toxins that are present in the intestines, as well as being a key player in cellular repair and regeneration. And it also formulates the lymph, which is the colorless fluid in your lymphatic system that carries white blood cells. And you can imagine that that is extremely important. The horse's lymphatic system is largely in charge of removing any dead or damaged cells, along with filtering bacteria and toxin through the nodes. The lymphatic centers and ducts, or their pathways, are connected from the horse's face all the way through to their hind end, and they're sprinkled intermixed along the top line. Now, there are larger congregations of these lymphatic systems, and they're located in the shoulders and then also around the hips and the hind end. And there are also multiple spaced out amongst the intercostals that are called the dorsal thoracic nodes and then the lumbar nodes, and their names reflect their location with their relationship of the vertebrae. Now, the kidneys and the circulatory system also play a very large part in the detoxification. The veins are traveling from the tissues back to the heart, and along their way, they're circling past the intestines, collecting any digested nutrients, and then they pass through the liver for processing and detoxification. Waste is also filtered out of the blood as it passes through the kidneys, which is then expelled as urine, which is one of the ways that the body helps itself to detoxify. Now, for the skin, whatever is happening within the body is often noticeable up on top in some way, shape, or form. Now, the hair coat and skin are first indicators of an imbalance in the body. With humans, we commonly see acne issues associated with a poor diet. More dramatic signs like eczema can be seen with food sensitivities or allergies. And the hair coat for animals and the skin, we know to look at them as general indicators of health. We're looking for a glossy coat, an even coat. We all know the stereotypical patchy coat of certain metabolic issues, and it's just one of the first things we look at for a well-maintained animal. Now, with cattle, we're going to focus mainly on the liver. So, especially when we're looking at our dairy cows, a cow in early lactation processes produces about 80 pounds of milk a day, and therefore they need a supply of 6 pounds of glucose just to maintain their milk production. As you can imagine, this is a huge impact on the liver itself. The liver is highly affected by any dietary imbalances, and this amount of intense activity can actually lead to an accumulation of waste and toxins that's difficult to process. So the liver is going to be a key organ to overall livestock productivity that is also highly affected by any stress. And so cattle stress is one thing that we want to keep at a minimum. We're all familiar with Temple Grandin and her work that she did to revolutionize the cattle handling industry, and all the work that she put into studying their behavior. That all loops back around to this as well. So things such as extreme temperatures, excess handling, transportation, and weaning are all stressors that can suppress the immune system of cattle and also trigger any natural inflammatory responses. And this is something to keep in mind because we see a lot of our cattle clients out at county fair and county fair seasons. And so their cows are going through a lot of these stressors. I know some of our fairs happen in the summertime still, or the late summer. And so they're dealing with the extreme temperatures along with excess handling and transportation. So they're going through a lot, and some of them are more used to it than others, but it's still a stress on the body that's not naturally there. And any uncontrolled inflammation may be a major and contributing factor and a common link among several important infectious metabolic diseases. So if we can come in and provide PEMF support, then that's always beneficial for clients as well. Now, when we're looking at our cats and dogs, it's definitely a little bit of a different note than from our livestock. So, cats and dogs are more prone to toxins since they are usually inside of houses and have close proximity to humans. So, they're dealing with things such as chemical air fresheners, lawn pesticides, pavement and sidewalk deicers, laundry products, grain based and highly processed foods, human foods, and also limited exercise on top of all that. The liver is one of the few organs with key differences between the cats and the dogs. The dog, we're going to see more similarities between other mammals and humans. The cat, however, actually has fewer metabolic enzymes and does not have the same ability to handle or process toxins as the other species. So, the development of overall liver disease is also due to different causes between cats and dogs. In dogs, we often see liver failure associated with congenital problems, traumatic injuries, infections, other diseases that are putting stress on the system. While cats, on the other hand, can develop liver disease, not only from infection or trauma, but also they're more susceptible to minor stresses impacting their body much more physically. And our pets' bodies react to toxins much as ours do. The immune system ramps up processes like inflammation, mucus production, and or diarrhea to help with the immune system's ability to resolve the problem and then purge the body of any offending toxins or inflammation as well. But when the body is overwhelmed with too many toxins, it's then forced to store them until there's an opportunity to eliminate them at a better time. And sometimes with our small animals, they're under a constant level of stress depending on what they're going through. And there's never really a good time to get rid of them, so to speak. And so over time, it can build and cause some issues such as fatigue, infection, and then ultimately overload the immune system and make it more susceptible to issues. So keeping the animal's stress is down is going to be a factor, as well as maintaining this proper balance of detox throughout the body. So, what do detoxes look like in animals? You're going to be seeing two different types of detoxes that we've broken up for you guys. The first one are going to be natural self cleaning processes. These are things such as coughing, sneezing, vomiting in our companion animals, diarrhea, light to moderate sweating, the appearance of waxy skin or hair, the coat purge, and regrowth. So, these are all things that we'll see more immediately. The sweating you'll see in the middle of a session. Some of these we'll see in the middle of sessions, such as coughing and sneezing. Vomiting and diarrhea may happen afterwards, and the coat purge and regrowth is going to be a little bit of a slower process, but it does happen. More reactive changes are going to be definitely more subjective depending on the animal. We've seen things such as changes in mood or temperament, and this is why we encourage that you have a few baseline PEMF sessions with a client prior to going to a show and not pulsing them the first time 24 to 48 hours out of their class, because every animal may react differently and it can change their mood or temperament. Fascial spasms, these are the smaller muscle contractions that you may see that happen when the machine is not on. It looks like the skin is still pulsing, but the loops may be off, the machine may be completely off, and the skin is still moving. And these are easily mitigated with a low intensity session and also some manual manipulation, just firm petting with the pressure and to help smooth those muscle fibers back out, or also some fascial release techniques that can be learned as well. Over time, there can also be changes to hoof and nail growth. These are things that you can track with the assistance of your farrier, and also making notes yourself. And then also post-session muscle soreness. We've all been there. If you pulse yourself after a hard workout, or if you just use a little too high of an intensity for a little too long and you come off of the chair or the accessory and you're a little bit sore the next day, that is very common. Also, changes in feed and water intake. Hopefully, with the water intake, it is more water to help the body flush out the toxins that are throughout it, especially in the urinary tract and the digestive tract. Changes in feed may be more, maybe less. Each horse is going to be a little different. So I just recommend that you keep an eye on that, especially after their first few sessions. Now, in more drastic situations, we can run into mild colic situations. If the horse has a lot of issues or stress, it can overload the digestive system when PEMF sessions happen. That's part of the processing as they go through the digestive tract. And if it overloads that system, then we can also see signs of colic as well. Remember that colic is a umbrella term for any digestive issues. So it's just good to always consult with your vet, and we'll talk about some other steps in the future about how to process things like this as well. The last one that we're going to talk about is tie up like muscle cramps. So, tying up is common for some sport horses, and we can often see similar cramp styles in high performance horses, such as eventers, race horses, and any horse working at higher levels than what they are typically used to. So this is triggering the detox of excess lactic acid in these high performers and can exhibit tie-up like spasms. It may not be an exact tie-up occasion, but they have the same physiological presence. So it's always important to have a conversation with the owner beforehand about their exercise schedule, what their workouts have been like, if they just came off of a show or a very long trail ride, if anything strenuous has been going on. And it's also important to ask about if they have any underlying conditions such as RER, PSSM, or EPSM, which are all common muscle disorders or genetic issues or metabolic issues that can affect the muscle as well. So sometimes the first sessions can be tough, but the second is usually much better, which is why we recommend starting at a low intensity for first timers, or if it's been a while since you've seen that animal. And that can happen with horses who metabolize normally but are just carrying a lot of tension. So our professional practice is you always consult with a vet on a case with any unexpected responses, and then also rule out any underlying problems before continuing sessions. So handling the detox. Step one to handling the detox is to assess it. Is it a mild change like the ones we talked about, or is it going to be a more presented issue like a colic or a tie-up like situation? Loop in the veterinarian is needed. This is why it's always important to have a working relationship with either vets in your areas, especially those working with your horses, and then just keeping them in the loop on sessions as well. If a vet is not required, you can proceed with a low intensity pulsing around the core of the body. Remember, the location of the organs is going to be key. So going very low and very slow is going to be an important part of that. And when I say low, you want to turn it to where you just start to see pulsing and then back it down just a hair so that that pulsing is very minimal or is diminished completely, but the box is still on. That's going to be your low intensity. And you're going to leave it there and move it back ever so slightly every few minutes for about 15 minutes. You also can encourage the owner to then hand walk and or lightly stretch the animal. I'm more preferable to hand walking, but both is a good pairing as well. And then also schedule a prompt follow-up session to assist with any further detoxing that happens in the next 24 to 48 hours. It's important to remember that detox is inherently not a bad thing. It's a natural process in the body. PEMF has just expedited it and has slightly overwhelmed the system, but PEMF may also help resolve the situation as well. So the do's and the don'ts of the detox. Don't skirt around owner education. Let the owner know that there is a possibility of a detox effect. A lot of times PEMF is touted as having zero side effects, which as we know is inherently false because any muscle soreness, any headaches, any brain fog, any of the things that we talked about early on, those are all side effects of PEMF. So make sure that you're wording everything properly to your owners and in your marketing, and also let them know that it is a thing that can happen. That way they're less likely to have a panic if something does occur. They know what's happening in that process. And for you, don't lose your head or get stressed if the detox effects occur. It's important to remain calm. You know what's happening. You understand the technology and the science behind it. And now we just have to look at the situation at hand and handle it as we can. Don't leave. Stay and speak with the vet as necessary. Your owner may be scared. Your horse may not be in the best shape if it is a colic or a tie-up situation. So if the vet does get called out, always stay and converse with them. Let them know what you did in your session, how far you got, when you started seeing things. All these can be key to helping that horse in the coming steps. So, do recommend that your client consult a licensed veterinarian or nutritionist about adding electrolytes or salt to their feed at night to help encourage water intake and replenish any minerals in their body that are needed. Be careful recommending any specific products yourself. In some states, this can be considered prescribing um, any medications or supplements, and that may be out of your scope of practice. So just be on the safe side and always ask them to consult with their vet or nutritionist on hand. Do start new horses with 1 or 2 lower intensity sessions. This is always a really great call. Every horse is coming in at different levels of health and needs. And so it's always good to just assess them as they are and start them with a low introductory session to kind of bring them back to a new baseline of cellular wellness. And so that's always something that I recommend doing, and proceed each time as if it's a new horse. If you haven't, even if they've been a previous client and you haven't seen them in a couple months, it's almost as if you're starting back at square one. So remember what that horse's schedule has been. I also do recommend that you end new clients with a low intensity pulsing around their core. It's very similar to what we do on the human side. Remember, again, the location of those supporting organs that we're working with. And so any low intensity cooling down is what we call, should be focused around the core of the animal. And then do take your pulsing level into consideration. Was it too high? This can be done even if it looks like it is a regular quote unquote level for that animal. You want to make sure that, again, you've talked to the owner about any underlying conditions, any changes in their schedule or exercise routines. And for that horse on that day, it may have been too high of an intensity. So that's just something to always be cognizant of. So I hope you all enjoyed this webinar today. Remember, if you guys ever have any questions, you can reach out to us at support@pulseequine.com, and we'll be more than happy to help answer your questions. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.